Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Mariah and this is Mariah's Moods. So in today's video, I'm going to bring to you some book recommendations. So I realize it is fall, it's spooky season, and a lot of book recommendations at this time tend to kind of go around spooky horror thrillers, the scary. Well, I realize that not everyone is into the spooky, scary thrillers, horrors, and that's totally okay. People love what they love. I'm just happy people are reading. But it kind of got me thinking, and I thought it would be a good idea to maybe recommend some fallish books that aren't so spooky. So I've compiled a list of 15 books that I think would be great to read in the fall season that have fall vibes but aren't necessarily scary. I have divided by genre/category that I think anyone could really enjoy any time of year, but these specific books are one that I think either fit to the fall season or books that I personally like to read at this time of the year. So I will leave timestamps down below with specific sections, how I'm dividing these 15 books. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the list. So our first set of books that I'm going to start with might be a little specific, but I think they definitely fit the time of year. You could really read these anytime that you like, but they're not spooky and they're actually very sweet, and that's going to be Witchy Romance. So I have 3 Witchy Romance books that I would like to recommend to you. So the first one that I would like to recommend is Witchful Thinking by Celestine Martin. So this book is following Lucy, who is living in this very sweet seaside magical community, and she is a witch, and she's very content with her life at the moment. She's a high school teacher. She loves to read tea leaves at night. She loves to work in her garden. However, Lucy is starting to kind of wonder if there's more out there for her, and she wants to be a little more brave and bold. So one night, her and her sister and cousins do a little bit of magic, and they all wish for something very specific to change in their life. And so Lucy's wish is to be more bold, be more brave. Well, that wish kind of turns into a spell, and she gets to the point where she can't say no. And this leads to some very awkward situations for her, like joining a karaoke competition. But shortly after that, Alex, Lucy's high school crush, moves back into town and buys the house directly across the street. Now, this house is rumored to be jinxed or hexed, so Alex approaches Lucy with the help to unjinx this house. As they're working together, they have to kind of go through their childhood crush / kind of romance, and, love blooms from there. This was just so delightful. I actually read this last spring, so it doesn't necessarily have to be read in the fall, but it is something that I highly recommend. I love the dynamic between Lucy and Alex. I love the depth of both of their characters and the way that they communicate with each other. I love a good second chance romance, and this is just a light-hearted, good fall read. The second book that I would like to recommend, I feel like I've talked about several times on my channel. This is a recent read for me, but I absolutely loved it, and that is A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This book was absolutely wonderful. I just can't get enough of it, and I still think about it every once in a while. This book is following Mika. Mika is a witch that is very alone. In her world, witches are obviously secret, and to protect themselves, really witches don't interact with each other except for every couple of months they get together and kind of just have tea and talk about life, but it's not really what Mika would want for her everyday life. Another level to that is that unfortunately, shortly after a witch is born, they are orphaned. For whatever reason, their parents are gone. And so not only are the witches orphaned and left alone, they also don't have a strong community. So Mika is very, very lonely, and she doesn't have anyone to talk about her magic with. She loves her magic. She loves to practice her magic. So she decides to start posting videos online pretending to be a witch and just talking about magic without anyone really suspecting that she is a witch. Until one day she is approached by a family who says that they would like Mika to come to their house because they need help. They have 3 young witchlings that really need help harnessing their power. Mika reluctantly agrees to this invitation, but when she gets there, she realizes they in fact do have three precocious girls who really have no control over their power, and it can be very dangerous. As she's there, she starts to become a member of this family and starts to really find what she's been looking for. And we've got some romance blooming in the story as well. What I loved most about this wasn't necessarily the romance, which I do love, and we've got some grumpy sunshine happening there, but it's the found family and acceptance in this book that is just absolutely beautiful. There is a fun, interesting plot twist at the end of the story that is not spooky, but it is very interesting, unexpected, but in a good way, and I can't recommend this book enough. The last witchy romance that I have to recommend is going to be The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This is another romance witchy book following Viv and Reese. Viv and Reese had a very short whirlwind kind of romance when they were very young, but they broke up, leaving Viv heartbroken. One drunken night, her and her cousin decide to seek revenge and put a little silly hex on Reese. Many, many years later, when Reese returns back to their town, he finds that that hex is still very strong. Unfortunately, that hex is also trickling down into the community. So Viv and Reese have to work together to save their community before some dark magic takes over. This book was really great. It was actually very funny. There was many moments where I outwardly chuckled in this book, which really doesn't happen for me a lot. I did like the dynamic between Viv and Reese. I just loved the cast of characters surrounding them. This was just very lighthearted. Nothing too serious, a very quick read, and super fun in the fall. So obviously we're in fall, and most people think of spooky season. I love spooky season. It's my favorite time of year, but not everyone obviously likes spooky. But that does not mean that you cannot enjoy a thriller. So I've got a list of books here that are under the thriller category that I feel aren't necessarily spooky, but more suspenseful. So I've got 6 books, one of which I can't find my physical copy for, which I definitely need to find. But I've got 6 books here that are thrillers that are more suspenseful than scary. So the first one I have is The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. This is a story following Harriet, or Harry, who is newly engaged to Edward. Edward has a very affluent family that he's kind of estranged from. Well, when they announce their engagement, his family kind of hops onto Harriet and really wants her to act as the bridge to kind of bring Edward back to the main family and welcome Harriet along the way. So the two of them decide to kind of slowly reintegrate themselves back into this family. Well, the family has a very interesting way that they celebrate holidays. They tend to play games, and it's a very interactive game. While playing one of the games, Harriet comes into possession of a very strange recording, and on this recording, it sounds like a confession to a very serious crime. Harriet must decide if she believes this recording and pursue kind of figuring out what this happens, or does she just say it's part of the game and kind of move on. This book was very, very suspenseful. It was a very quick read. It was very interesting the way that these families interacted with each other, but this kind of gives a little bit of like a Knives Out kind of Clue vibe to it, which was really fun. So not only are you experiencing these very strange family games, you're also kind of trying to figure out, is this tape real? Who is it of? Who is the person responsible? Who are the victims in this? This was just a really fun time, and I highly recommend. This is something that could be read all through fall, even in the winter, because it does highlight many of the holidays that happen October to the new year. The next book I have is Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This is I don't know how to even classify this book. I would say light-hearted thriller, like almost like a satiric thriller? I don't really know. It's interesting, so just bear with me. So this story is following Peyote, and Peyote actually works in hell. He works on the 5th floor, which is the bribes and deals department. Basically, he is an agent that goes into the living world and strikes a deal with people in order for their soul. So Peyote is so close to getting a great promotion that would actually boost him up a level of hell where things are a lot more tolerable. The only thing he needs is to get a full, complete family set of souls, and he is one away. So he is basically going to try and convince one final member of this Harrison family to sell their soul so he gets this promotion. While he's doing it, he comes into contact with a new person that has been promoted to his level, who has a little bit more of a history connected to the living world. We're also following this family that has a mystery attached to them, so there's lots of levels to this story. But what I really enjoyed was the setup. The setting is very interesting. We kind of have Dante's Inferno of like the different levels of hell, and as we move up, things get a little bit better for the people, but not perfect because obviously it's hell. But it's kind of funny because the hell that Peyote lives in, it's like you have all the pens that you need, but like they're all out of ink. It's like these minor inconveniences that would drive you crazy. So there's definitely some comedy in here. It's very satirical, but there is a mystery, and so you're kind of following multiple points of view, different timelines that all converge into one. That is a really, really great story, and it's very entertaining, and I promise it is not scary. Another thriller that I have is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a YA thriller, so not scary at all, strictly a mystery. This book is following Pip, who is working on her senior project where she's basically looking at the influence of media with the outcome of a crime. And so she decides to highlight a crime in her hometown where a girl disappears and her boyfriend is basically presumed guilty. Unfortunately, he decides to take his own life before they can actually come to a true verdict. However, Pip has always been very suspicious of the community or society's demonization of this poor young man, and so she decides to investigate it a little bit further under the guise of her senior project. As she starts to interview people that were associated with these two teenagers, and as she talks to other people in the community, she starts to learn that there's a lot more to this case than was ever presented to the public. And it's fantastic. What this teenager, this senior 18-year-old girl can do is just so amazing and also frustrating because it is what the justice system should have done from the beginning. So we've got some commentary in there. We've got mixed media because we're following her notes and recordings and phone calls and journal entries. It's just great. It is very fast paced. I think I read it in like a day, and I can't recommend this enough. It is definitely worth the read. Okay, so the next book I have, I promise is not spooky, but it is eerie. It has a little bit of an unsettling feel, a slow build, but man, does the end pay off. And that's The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This book, I'm telling you, was almost a DNF for me, and I know that's terrible to say on a book recommendations video, but I am so glad that I kept reading because the ending was something I did not see coming at all. So this book is following Theo, who is a psychotherapist. He is very, very interested in a patient in his new facility that he is working in named Alicia Berenson. Alicia is a patient at this psychiatric facility, basically serving her sentence for the murder of her husband. However, Alicia has not spoken since the day her husband was killed. And everyone is just in awe and enamored by this crime that she has been convicted of and the fact that she has not spoken to anyone. Theo is convinced to be the psychotherapist that finally gets her to speak and really know the truth of what happened that night. When I tell you that is just the surface of this story, it is. If you decide to pick this up, please know that it is a really slow burn thriller. It builds the suspense, it builds the story, it has this eerie kind of unsettling feeling. We have Theo's thoughts, but we're also getting these little inserts of Alicia's diary leading up to the night of the murder. And when I tell you the plot twist at the end was something that I and many people I've talked to that read this book did not call, fantastic, fantastic. Highly recommend. Again, not scary, but definitely eerie. I don't know where my physical copy of this book is, so I'm just going to put up a picture right here. But my next recommendation for a thriller mystery that's not more scary but more suspenseful, and that would be The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So this book was really great. It was very suspenseful. It's a murder mystery whodunit. So this is following a wedding that is happening on an island off the coast of Ireland, and unfortunately during the wedding celebrations a body is found. So we're following this cast of characters trying to figure out who is the actual body, because we're not told who it is, and who is responsible for this crime. So this is almost like a double whodunit mystery. So what I really loved about this story was that we get this whole cast of characters, the bride, the grooms, the groomsmen, we have the wedding planner. All of them are suspicious, but all of them could possibly be that body as well. So as I was reading, I was constantly trying to figure out who was who, what were the motives, why is this happening? I loved the isolated setting. We've got spotty cell service, a storm is brewing, and so we just have this atmospheric setting as well. I would highly recommend this audiobook because it is a full cast, so you kind of have more of an immersive experience as you're listening to this story. I highly recommend this one if you want a quick, eerie, isolated thriller. Alright, so the final thriller that I have on this list is going to be In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a story, kind of like a dark academia thriller mystery. So this book is following Jessica, who is set to return to her college for a reunion. There she will meet up with 6 of her best friends. They were in a very tight-knit group from the freshman year of college. Unfortunately, when they were in college, one of their friends was found murdered one fateful night. Another friend was actually convicted of that murder and sent to prison. Well, when they come back to this reunion, someone is not quite convinced that the friend that was convicted was actually guilty, and they are set on finding the actual murderer in this case. Because of the pressure and because of secrets possibly unfolding, the 6 of them work together to really dig into what happened that fateful night and figure out who in fact was responsible for their friend's death. This one was really good. It was fast-paced. I like the dual timeline. We're getting the current day, what's happening, how are they going to investigate and figure out who was really in charge, and the past tense leading up to that fateful night. I also really like the element of an unreliable narrator. Jessica is the main voice of this story, and she's not always the most convincing in what she's saying. She's not always the nicest person and makes the best choices. So it's very hard to take what she's saying as truth, and so it almost kind of confuses you a little bit more. I do highly recommend this one if you're looking for more of a mystery whodunit with a little bit of academia mixed in. Alright, so the next 2 books are something that might not be for everyone, but it's something that I really like to reread and re-engage with in the fall season, and that is going to be classic dystopian novels. I don't know why specifically. It's not like they're set in the fall. It just, I always look at them and I'm like, you would be a really great read in this season. I think I just want to kind of cozy up with a little of dystopia. And these books are probably ones you've heard of, but if you've not read them, I highly recommend. The first one being 1984 by George Orwell. 1984 is one of those books that, and really both of these, are just like scary, but like a non-spooky way, because when you really start to think about it, society is not far off from this. So in 1984, we are in this area called Oceania, and we are following Winston, who is just like a mid-level person. He's getting a little tired of living under this omnipresent government, Big Brother, and kind of wants to start a rebellion or be a part of a rebellion. He keeps a secret journal and starts a secret relationship, and kind of things go from there. But there's so much more to this, and there's a lot of connections. I mean, this book was written in the 50s, but when we think about some of the things that are talked about in this book, it's very, very scary in terms of what we have in our society today. But it is not gore thriller. It's more of just like the more you think about it, the more it's kind of unnerving. Continuing on with that theme would be Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is, I think, out of the two, I do appreciate this one or enjoyed this one